Number 1. The habit of controlling what you can, and letting go of the rest. There was once a young merchant in ancient Rome who lost everything in a single storm. His ship, filled with goods he had spent years saving for, vanished beneath the waves before it ever reached the harbor. When he arrived back in the city, empty-handed and exhausted, his friends expected to see a broken man. Instead, he shrugged, smiled faintly, and said, "The storm took the cargo, not my character." This simple sentence reflects the heart of Stoicism, the understanding that life is divided into two parts, what is in our control and what is not. The Stoics believed that most of our suffering comes from confusing these two categories. We worry about what people think of us, we obsess over the past, we fear the future, and we exhaust ourselves trying to control outcomes that were never ours to command. The first habit of a mentally unbreakable person is the daily practice of separating these two worlds. Imagine waking up each morning and asking yourself, what can I actually control today? The answer is always the same. Your thoughts, your actions, your reactions, your effort, your words, and your choices. That is your entire kingdom. Everything else, the economy, the weather, other people's opinions, luck, timing, and fate, belongs to the world outside your gates. The Stoics taught that once you accept this division, a strange kind of peace appears. When something goes wrong, you no longer ask, why is this happening to me? Instead, you ask, what is the best response I can give to this? And that single shift turns every obstacle into a training ground. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private journal, never expecting anyone to read it, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This habit is not about indifference or laziness. It is about focusing your energy like a beam of light, instead of scattering it into the dark corners of worry. A person who lives this habit becomes incredibly hard to shake, because their sense of peace no longer depends on the chaos outside. They stop chasing control over the world and start mastering control over themselves. And once you control yourself, the world loses much of its power to harm you. Number 2. The habit of negative visualization. Every evening, an old philosopher would sit by the window of his small home and imagine losing everything he loved. He pictured his house collapsing, his friends disappearing, his wealth vanishing, even his own health fading away. To anyone watching, this would have seemed like a sad or pessimistic ritual. But when he stood up from that chair, he felt lighter, calmer, and strangely grateful for the simple things around him. This practice was called premeditatio malorum, or the premeditation of evils, and it was one of the Stoics' most powerful habits. The idea was not to dwell in fear, but to prepare the mind for reality. Life is unpredictable, and loss is inevitable. But when loss arrives unexpectedly, it shatters us because we never considered it possible. The Stoics believed that by mentally rehearsing hardship, we remove its power to shock and destroy us. Imagine a person who has never considered the possibility of losing their job. One day the company downsizes and they are suddenly unemployed. Panic floods their mind, fear takes over, and they feel as if their entire life is collapsing. But imagine another person who, once a week, quietly reflects, one day, this job might end. One day, I may need to start again. When the same event happens, it still hurts, but it does not break them. They already know they can survive it. Negative visualization is not about expecting the worst. It is about appreciating the present. When you imagine losing your home, you suddenly feel gratitude for the roof over your head. When you imagine losing a loved one, you treat them with more kindness today. When you imagine losing your health, you value the strength in your body right now. The Stoics understood something that modern society often forgets. Comfort can make us fragile. When life is too easy for too long, we grow soft, and even small problems feel like disasters. But when you occasionally step into discomfort mentally or physically, you build resilience. Cold showers, fasting, long walks without luxury, or simply imagining loss are all ways to train the mind. The goal is not to become gloomy, but to become grateful and prepared. A person who practices negative visualization does not live in fear. They live in appreciation, and appreciation is one of the strongest forms of mental armor. Number 3. The habit of voluntary discomfort. In the height of his wealth, the philosopher Seneca would sometimes leave his grand home, put on rough clothes, and eat the simplest food he could find. He would sleep on the floor, far from the luxury he could easily afford. He did this not because he had to, but because he chose to. And as he lay there in the darkness, he would ask himself a simple question: is this what I feared? This was the habit of voluntary discomfort, the practice of stepping into difficulty by choice, so that difficulty never feels unbearable when it arrives by force. The Stoics believed that comfort is a double-edged sword. While it makes life pleasant, it also makes us dependent. The more we rely on comfort, the more fragile we become. A person who cannot tolerate hunger, cold, boredom, or inconvenience becomes a prisoner of comfort. But a person who can endure discomfort by choice becomes free. Imagine two people who lose electricity during a hot summer night. One of them is used to air conditioning, constant entertainment, and instant comfort. They grow restless, irritated, and angry. The other has occasionally trained themselves to sit in discomfort, to walk in the heat, too fast, or to live simply for short periods. To them, the situation is unpleasant, but not unbearable. They adapt quickly. This is the strength that voluntary discomfort creates. It teaches the mind that you can survive more than you think. It builds confidence, not the loud, arrogant kind, but the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you can handle hardship. When you willingly step into discomfort, you stop fearing it. And when you stop fearing it, it loses its power over you. This habit can be practiced in small ways: taking cold showers, skipping a meal, walking instead of driving, turning off your phone for a day, or choosing the harder but more meaningful path. Each small act is like lifting a weight for your mind. Over time, your mental muscles grow stronger, and when real hardship comes, as it always does, you face it with the calm strength of someone who has been there before. Number 4. The habit of reflecting on death. In ancient Rome, victorious generals would ride through the streets in grand parades, surrounded by cheering crowds. Stood a servant whose only job was to whisper a single sentence into the general's ear: "Remember, you are mortal." This reminder was not meant to ruin the celebration. It was meant to keep the general grounded, humble, and aware of life's fragility. The Stoics believed that remembering death was not morbid, it was liberating. Most people live as if they have unlimited time. They postpone their dreams, delay their apologies, hold grudges, and waste days on meaningless distractions. But when you truly understand that your time is limited, your priorities change. The Stoics practiced memento mori, remembrance of death, not to become depressed, but to become focused. Imagine waking up each morning with the quiet understanding that this day might be your last. Suddenly, small annoyances lose their power. You stop wasting energy on petty arguments. You appreciate simple moments more deeply. You speak more honestly. You live more intentionally. Death becomes a teacher, not an enemy. It reminds you that every moment is precious. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think." This is not a threat, it is a gift. When you accept mortality, fear begins to fade. You realize that the worst thing that can happen to you is something that will happen to everyone anyway. And once you accept that, many of life's smaller fears seem insignificant. A person who is not afraid of death becomes incredibly strong. They stop living to avoid pain and start living to pursue meaning. They choose courage over comfort, honesty over approval, and purpose over pleasure. And that is what makes them mentally unbreakable. Number 5. The habit of daily self-reflection. Every night, before going to sleep, the Stoic philosopher Epictetus encouraged his students to ask themselves 3 questions. What did I do well today? What did I do poorly? And what could I do better tomorrow? This simple ritual formed the final habit of a mentally unbreakable person. Daily self. Most people drift through life without examining their actions. Days blur together, mistakes repeat themselves, and growth happens slowly, if at all. But the Stoics believe that the unexamined day is a lost opportunity. Self-reflection is like polishing a mirror. It allows you to see yourself clearly, your strengths, your weaknesses, your habits, and your patterns. Imagine 2 people living the same life. One of them never reflects. They react impulsively, get angry, make the same mistakes, and never pause to ask why. The other person spends 5 minutes each night reviewing their day. They notice when they lost their temper, when they wasted time, when they acted with courage, and when they avoided responsibility. Over weeks and months, this awareness changes them. They begin to correct their behavior. They become calmer, wiser, and more disciplined. The power of self-reflection lies in its honesty. It requires you to face yourself without excuses, but it also allows you to forgive yourself and start again the next day. The Stoics did not believe in perfection. They believed in progress. Each day was another chance to practice virtue, another opportunity to grow stronger. A person who reflects daily becomes difficult to defeat because they are constantly improving. They turn every mistake into a lesson. Every failure becomes a teacher, and over time, this steady improvement builds a mind that is calm under pressure, strong in adversity, and guided by wisdom rather than impulse.